Good morning, good afternoon. Today we're going to be talking about square roots. So 1.8 is actually roots. Today we're going to be doing square roots. Tomorrow we'll be doing cube roots. So I can evaluate square roots and use square roots to solve equations. So first we need to define a few things. A perfect square is a number that results from squaring an integer. So an integer is just a number. It's either positive or negative. So what that means is 3 times 3 is 4. Or, sorry, gosh, 3 times 3 is 9. 4 times 4 is 16. 5 times 5 is 25. An integer is going to be a whole number, but it's both positive and negative. It's good to remember that negative 4 times a negative 4 times itself will get me 16 also. So these could be both positive and negative. The root would be could be both positive and negative. It's good to remember these. So, this is 8 times 8, 9 times 9, 10 times 10, 11 times 11, 12 times 12, 13 times 13, 14 times 14, and 15 times 15. These are the first 15 perfect squares. The square root is going to be that integer or that number you take times itself to get that perfect square. And it's good to remember it's both positive and negative. Square roots undo the squaring of a number. So here, m squared equals n. If I square root n, I should get m. This is a little confusing until we see it in action. Okay, so there's a few different vocabulary that we need to know. So the radicand right here is that number inside of this symbol that kind of looks like a division symbol, but it's not. It has this little lip here that this makes it the radical symbol. And this means that I need to find the square root. Sometimes there's a number right here, and that's what we'll be getting into tomorrow. This number, if it's a 3, it's going to be a cube root. If there's no number, we actually have to just imagine it's kind of like that invisible math. Like this will be a 2. If there's no number there, that's a 2. And what this means is what number times itself twice is 16. So whatever that number is inside here. So what number times itself will get me 16? Well, both 4. Let's not put it in that box. Both 4 multiplied by itself will get me 16, and negative 4. Very important to remember that negative 4 also is a square root of 16. So if directions are find the square roots, if I have an S on that, you have to think that they're going to be both positive and negative. If it says find the square root, you have to look for the sign in front of that radical symbol. So if I had a negative here, and it said, what is the square root of this? It would be the negative 4. If there is nothing here, I guess I could use an eraser. If I have nothing here, that's going to be just the positive 4 right here. Okay? So, all right, so find the square roots of the numbers, So 9, these first, it says roots, so it's going to be both the positive and the negative. So what number times itself will get me 9? Well, 3 and negative 3, both positive and negative. 3 times 3 is 9. Negative 3 times negative 3, because a negative times a negative is a positive, is also 9. So this would be 7, negative 7, 13, negative 13. Okay, another way we can write this, 196 is both positive and negative 14. You might see it like this sometimes. This just means both numbers, both positive and negative 15. Okay, now, next directions, it just says find the square root of the number. And in this case, I think we have to add our radical symbol on these in your notes. I think they don't have them. Can't remember if we fixed that last year. Anyway, So I have to look, there's no symbol here, or there's no positive or negative, so we're going to take the positive root. So this is just 3. This one I have a negative, so it's going to be a negative 7. Again, what multiplied by itself will get me that 49. Negative 7 times the negative 7 is 49. Okay, no symbol, so it's going to, or no operation, positive, negative, so we have 13, negative 14. Now, this one here is a trick question. If you see I have that negative inside here, I need to think what multiplied by itself will get me a negative 25, or 225. And when I multiply, if I multiply that negative 15 times a negative 15 by itself, I will get a positive number. So there's never a time when I multiply something by itself to get a negative number. So this is actually going to be imaginary. There's never, if you ever see a negative in there, can't do it. It's imaginary. Okay? Okay, finding the square roots of fractions. In this case, you're going to just find the square root of the numerator and the denominator and simplify if possible. So you could also rewrite these as two separate, square root of 9 over the square root of 16. So square root of 9, and again, if it wants it to be positive, because it says square root, if it wants to be positive, it won't have anything. If it wants it to be negative, it'll have that negative on the outside. So square root of 9 is 3, square root of 16 is 4, and that's it. Done. Okay, so this would be a negative. Square root of 25 is 5, square root of 36 is 6. And I just have that one negative on the outside there. Okay, finding the square root of decimals. So you want to find the square root of the number as if it didn't have a decimal. And if it has 2 decimal points, the root will only have 1 decimal place. So here, this 81 has 2 decimal places, so the root will only have 1. Here, I have 2 decimal places, the root will only have 1. And again, you should check your answer with a calculator, put in the calculator, and do 0.9 times 0.9, and I should get 0.81. Oh, there we go. I should get whatever is inside of this, the radical symbol, and I do. Now, a lot of kids will mistake it and say, well, it should be 0.09. That's the root, because there's 2 decimal places. But if I multiply that times itself, 0.09, I see I get a lot more. This number here does not look like this number here. So I know I did something wrong. Okay? Okay, solving an equation with a variable squared. Now, if you have something, you want to square root both sides of the equation. And we're going to be getting into solving equations, but this is just going to be with if you have anything that has a variable squared like this. So to undo, this is where I said it will make more sense when we get into it and we do it. To undo this, so I need to get a by itself. I need to get rid of this 2, and to get rid of that 2, I need to square root it. So I'm going to square root both sides, and we'll learn this in the next chapter. Whatever you do to one side of an equation, you have to do it to the other. So this equal sign is my separation, and so if I do something on the right side, I have to do it on the left, and vice versa. So square root of a squared, that this here and this 2 cancel out. So all I have left is that a. Well, 196, square root of it would be the positive or negative 14. Now what I have to think is, if I put this positive 14 back into here, will it equal that 196? So before, I'm going to rewrite my equation because I kind of messed up here. So I wrote some stuff up here, but if I put negative or positive 14 into here as a, So 14 squared, does that equal 196? Yes, it does, because 14 squared is 196. So 196 equals 196. And what if I put negative 14 in there? Negative 14 squared, or negative 14 times negative 14, would get me 196. So 196 is equal to 196. Okay, so here, square roots, both sides. I have 2 decimal places, so in my answer, I'm only going to have 1. So positive or negative, decimal 3. Again, I could check my answer. And then square root, both sides. Square root of 4 is 2. Square root of 5 is 5, or 25 is 5. So y is equal to. Oh yes, and you want to make sure both positive and negative. And I did forget that on both, or on this last one. So positive or negative 2/5. Okay. And 4 minutes. Now, the last thing we're going to do is we have the area. And if we remember that our area is, when we're figuring out area, its area is going to be side squared, right? So whatever the side is, well, a community is building a playground on a square plot of land with an area of 625 square yards. What is the length of each side of the plot? So the area is 625. I'm going to replace that A with 625, and it's got to equal the side squared. So I need to know what the side is. So right here I have side squared will get me 625. I just need S by itself for just the side. So I need to find the square root of both sides. So this is an example of, are you ever going to have a negative length? No. So this is only going to be the positive. 625 square root would be 25. So each side length is 25. I can check my answer by doing 25 times 25. If I get 625 yards squared, I'm correct. Okay. Your assignment, page 75, 1 through 9 all, 13, and then 17 through 22 all. This, remember, on a separate sheet of paper. And they're going to be pretty quick. So it looks like a lot, but it's not.